Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The Shona I've got a saying, kwenda nete, ovu, zokorwa nemanda. I suppose the English equivalent of that is that there is a time when there's got to be sober and strategic thinking. And I think Zimbabwe has reached that point. The country has been independent for the last 46 years and counting. And we have blundered from pillar to post. Zimbabwe is a failed state. Millions of our people are living in abject poverty in Zimbabwe. And millions more have been scattered all over the world like leaves during the dry season. We can't go on like this. Our biggest problem in Zimbabwe is the failure to govern ourselves. It's the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. That is the root cause of our problem. The question is what to do about it. And this is why we need sober and strategic thinking. If we are ever going to get out of this cycle of blundering from pillar to post. At the present moment, the nation is gripped with this issue of constitutional amendment number 3. People are asking what to do about it. And a number of organizations have emerged, one of which is the Constitutional Defenders Forum, led by Tendai Biti, among others. This is what Tendai Biti has had to say on this proposed constitutional amendment number 3.
That is to say, 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate. It must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote.
I'll stop it there. I've said at the beginning that Zimbabwe is a failed state because we failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections for 46 years and counting. So if our main problem is the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections, the question then is stopping this amendment going to end this case of rigged elections? The truth of the matter is, amendment number 3 is seeking to give Zanu PF additional dictatorial powers, additional to what they have already. In other words, even if we stop that amendment, Zanu PF still has enough dictatorial powers to rig elections. Mnangagwa rigged 2023 elections. He didn't have the additional dictatorial powers he's seeking now to get from amendment number 3. He rigged 2018 elections the same way. So the point is we need to end this case of rigged elections. And if stopping amendment number 3 is not going to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, then we should look for something that will stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And that we already know. We've known since the late 1990s. The nation realized that as long as Zanu PF retains dictatorial powers to rig elections, there will be no meaningful economic and political change in the country. This dawned to the nation in the late 1990s. MDC, led by Morgan Tsvangirai, and among others, Tendai Biti, Nelson Chamisa, was launched on the understanding that the party would bring about the democratic changes the nation was dying for. And ever since that launch in 1999, the people of Zimbabwe have risked their livelihoods, limbs, and many people have died to elect these MDC leaders into power on the understanding they will implement those reforms. 26 years down the line, Zanu PF is still able to rig elections. One is going to ask why? What has happened here? And the answer is, of course, clear. The MDC leaders, Tendai Biti and company, have not implemented even one token reform. They had their best chance to implement the reforms during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. They sold out. Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office. The E-Class Mercedes-Benz limos, very generous salaries and allowances. And for Morgan Tsvangirai, the $4 million mansion in the Highlands. For most of us, we thought that was the extent of the bribe. Now it's turning out Mugabe bribed them even more. All the senior MDC leaders got farms and cash and other bribes, which I'm sure in time the nation will get to know about. And with their snouts in the feeding trough, they forgot about the reforms. Worse still, they started participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF was rigging those elections. And that participating would give Zanu PF legitimacy. I can tell you now, they want to have relevance, political relevance, by championing to fight to stop this amendment number 3. They know that that amendment will not stop Zanu PF rigging the next elections. They know that if Zanu PF rigs the next elections, the dictatorship will still be there. So what are we fighting for in stopping Amendment number 3? I'll tell you now. If we succeed, we'll stop Mnangagwa remaining in office beyond 2028. If we fail, which is possible, because Zanu PF controls all the levers of power, then Mnangagwa will remain in office beyond 2028. And what is more, whatever happens, Tendai BT and company are taking up this fight with an eye on the next elections. If they can mobilize the people to fight against Amendment 3, they can also mobilize them to participate in the next elections, regardless how flawed that process may be. And if people participate again in those flawed elections, you're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. How do I know that they will participate? Well, they've participated in the past elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, because they wanted the trappings of high office. Their appetite for those trappings is not diminished by any stretch of imagination. And so they will participate in the next flawed elections regardless. This is why it is time for people of Zimbabwe to sober up and start thinking strategically. How are we going to end this case of rigged elections? And the answer to that is we should focus on the reforms. Yes, some people will say, how are you going to get the reforms implemented now? Yes, we had the chance during the GNU and we wasted it. Nonetheless, we can still recover, because as long as we do not participate in the flawed elections, we do not give Zanu PF legitimacy. How do I know that? Well, 2008 was a very significant year, because that year Zanu PF blatantly cheated in the March vote count and then used wanton violence in the runoff. And both SADC and the AU denied the regime legitimacy. And that is what forced them to accept the 2008 to 2013 GNU. SADC and the AU would have denied Zanu PF legitimacy after the 2023 elections, because both rejected those elections as flawed and illegal. But they could not go the extra mile and deny the regime legitimacy, because Nelson Chamisa had lied to the people, convincing them to participate in their millions in the flawed elections. He is back on the dancing floor as a boss to do exactly the same thing.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe, nokuti hakuna munanomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan ya mwara harifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
In short, the liars are back, and they are going to con you into believing that fighting to stop Amendment number 3 is the panacea to the nation's problems. It is not. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.